This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a program combining the science and magic of today's leading topics to co-create new solutions and promote evolutionary thinking. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring nothing if not predictable. If you do not change direction, you may end up where you're heading. Lo Tzu. We've become creatures of habit, reacting in avoidance due to past damage rather than acting in the moment from clearly thought out intent. This knee-jerk method of coping with the world has us superimposing the events of the past onto the present and making a rerun out of the future. We end up doing the same things in the same ways and expecting different results. One definition of insanity. Not only does this approach restrict our mobility, cripple our lives and ability to manifest, but it renders us utterly predictable. Anything that's predictable is also controllable. There are two sides to predicting human behavior as individuals or en masse. Data can be used to find safe passage and best serve all concerned, or to exploit and control. To some extent, we're all being controlled by our patterns. Is this being used against us? How can we come out from underneath the yoke of our habitual behavior? Can we use the patterning of an entire society to predict the future and find our sweet spot in it? Can we use these predictions to change direction and prevent impending disaster? Our guest this hour is in a unique position to offer some guidance on the subject. Dr. Sean D. Young is a UCLA Medical School professor and the founder and executive director of the University of California Institute for Prediction Technology. The Institute brings together experts in psychology, medicine, business, and technology to study cutting-edge ways of using social media and mobile technologies to change and predict human behavior. The Institute's work is featured in top media outlets including the New York Times, NPR, the Huffington Post, Yahoo Finance, TechCrunch, Mashable, and CBS News. Dr. Young is a frequent speaker on behavior change in the corporate world, giving talks to companies and organizations. He has a PhD in psychology and a master's in health service research from Stanford University. His website, SeanYoungPhD.com. Sean, thank you so much for joining us on the Science of Magic.
Thanks for having me, Gwilda.
You have to tell me, what exactly is prediction technology?
Prediction technology is the ability to be able to use technologies to predict different events. So as you said, I'm a behavioral psychologist by training, and my interest is really in the psychology of understanding why people do things and how we can use that information to change and predict their behavior. Along the way, and in some of the work that I did in graduate school and working at Stanford University, I was surrounded by people who were working on all kinds of new technologies. I was working for NASA Ames Research Center, working at Cisco, and a part of the booming startup and social media phase. And so along with that, taking the psychology research that I was doing, I incorporated that with technologies and realized we can really use technologies to be able to both predict and change behavior. So an example of that is we've been able to look at what people are talking about on social media like Twitter, look at the conversations that they're having on Twitter and use that information to be able to predict real world events like disease outbreaks, and currently working with government agencies on how we can predict and ultimately prevent disease outbreaks by mining social data to be able to predict what people are going to do in the future and what events are going to happen in the future.
That's pretty fascinating. I can't hardly wrap my head around how what people are talking about on Twitter can give you an idea about diseases or something.
Yeah. I mean, when we continue to encounter this, but especially when we first started, people said that is not possible. Why are you even going to try and study this area? That's just not possible.
We're going to have to pick up with this on the other side. Sean and I will return shortly, so don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Our current episodes are aired daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. In service to our listeners, prior innovative episodes can always be accessed free of charge on our website, thescienceofmagic.net. The Science of Magic is produced by Relma McConnell Media Company.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Hello, I'm Pete Marsh. With my daughter Justina, we will be presenting the new radio show, Too Good to Be True. If something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But with the help of Justina's amazing gifts, we're going to gain insight into questions that don't yet have complete answers. Have you wondered who built Stonehenge and for what reason? Why are crop circles found in the same region as Stonehenge and elsewhere? Are crop circles a hoax, or are they created with technologies that we have little knowledge of? Who built the pyramids in Egypt and also in other countries? How and why were they built? Was the Titanic switched with the Britannic as part of a gigantic insurance fraud, or for more insidious reasons? What caused the Tunguska event when trees were flattened over an 800 square mile area in Siberia? Will the new insights be too good to be true? Well, that will depend on what you are prepared to believe. Please join us as we start on this journey together. For more information on Too Good to Be True, visit www.xzbn.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is author Dr. Sean Young. His website, SeanYoungPhD.com. Sean, we got interrupted and I didn't get to hear the finish of what you were saying. It was very fascinating about how we can predict, how you can predict what's going to happen disease-wise or something based on conversations going on Twitter. Would you mind resuming?
Sure. So what we do, we start looking at what people are talking or what they're doing online. And there's a background and a history of this in psychology. Long before technologies, we could observe people's behavior and see how they're acting. You can look at the directions people are moving with their eyes. You can look at people's body language. You can listen to their tone. There are a lot of things that we can do without technologies to be able to read people's behavior. As technologies have come about, like social media, Google search terms and online search and wearable devices like Fitbits, Apple Watches, as those technologies have come about, they have provided a ton more data for us to be able to try to make sense of it. The question is, how do you make sense of that information? And we have worked on developing different approaches so that just like you can see when someone's folding their arms that they may be unhappy about something, you can be able to look into people's social media and use of technologies and be able to read and interpret what they're doing. So people on social media will, I call this reading between the lines or reading between the tweets when it comes to Twitter. And you can see the conversation topics people will be talking about. So we've been able to identify people who are talking about health behaviors and be able to use that information, for example, to predict disease outbreaks. But broadly, what it comes down to is an understanding of behavior change and behavioral psychology and really just understanding people.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? I mean, if you're listening to people's conversations and drawing conclusions from that, is there any? Do you feel like there's any invasion of privacy going on with that modality?
That's always a question that comes up. So there are different ways of doing it. In the case of Twitter, it's all public information. So the analogy is, if you are to say something on the street to someone else, that's public information. And if someone were to overhear you saying it, or if you were folding your arms on the street, or you're in an argument with someone else on the street, that's all public information. And so Twitter and a lot of technologies provide the same ways of being able to record human behavior. You can access all this information publicly, just as you would from seeing things on the street and seeing people interacting on the street. Separately, we also do a lot of detection or monitoring where we are following individual people. And we're only able to do that because through research that we're doing through our institute, we actually get people's informed consent. So if it's not public information for anyone to use, we have them sign a consent form and say, we are willing to have you follow us. We are willing to have you track our information. And we've gone back and we've asked people, what do you think about this? What are the risks and benefits of this? What do we need to have more informed consent? And things change just year by year. I mean, even actually faster than year by year. It's now to the point where people are so used to companies tracking their information. And, a lot of people have heard stories about CVS, when you slide a CVS card or a Target card, or make an Amazon purchase or write something on Facebook. Those companies are tracking you. They are aware of what you're doing, and they're trying to use it to understand how to get you to purchase things. And people are more and more aware that anything they do digitally is being tracked and mined by companies to try to get them to purchase things or show them advertisements. And so what we found from asking people is that they say, given that this is already being done by companies, you as a public health researcher and as a psychologist who are presumably doing this for our own public good, we support you on it.
So when did you come up with the idea to use social media and mobile technologies?
Yeah, it started back in 2003 when I was doing research at Stanford for my graduate degree, and there were companies that were friends who had companies that were popping up overnight as Facebook came out and started allowing Facebook applications. Companies that were coming out overnight and becoming huge hits. And a friend of mine pulled me to work with him at Cisco Systems, and I had been studying psychology, and we had this idea of, let's create what was called a mind map. Let's try to be able to understand people's psychology by looking at what they're doing online. And this is now pretty common. I gave the examples of what is happening with Facebook, with Amazon, with different companies, but this wasn't happening at the time. And so we had to start from scratch. Right now there are advertisements where when you go on Facebook, when you go on Google, you'll see advertisements. But if you can remember back about 10 years ago, there were still those advertisements, but they were terrible. They were not at all tailored for you. The kinds of, I remember getting advertisements to buy new high-heeled shoes, and I don't wear high-heeled shoes. So.
Well, but I have noticed that if I've shopped for anything anywhere online, the next time I look at a social media or just an online stopwatch or any number of things, all of a sudden the very thing I was looking at is up there trying to peddle itself. And that feels a little invasive to me.
Yeah. Technologies have come a long way in being able to target advertisements and be able to make them more tailored for people. It definitely feels invasive for some people. It's changed over time. I mean, it used to feel invasive for a lot more people. If you remember, back in 2014, there was a study. Facebook did a study where there was a lot of press attention, bad attention from them manipulating their users. But since then, it's almost expected. I think an analogy is here in California, and I assume with the rest of the nation, an analogy could be gas prices. We had, maybe it was about a year and a half ago when gas and oil prices were high. It was outrageous to think, gas prices were $4 a gallon. But once it reaches that peak and then comes back down, people are not as concerned or it's not as big of a shock when it starts moving back up, because at least it's not over $4 a gallon. And I think that same human psychology exists. And as people are being tracked more and more, they're being more comfortable with it. Younger generations are now expecting that this is just part of life. But the way I see it is that it's not necessarily, I think you're maybe alluding to, it's a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's a tool, it's an approach, it's something we've really learned how to do, and continue to learn how to do. But there are good and bad applications of it, as with anything. So we hope and believe that the work we're doing for public good, that while companies are out there trying to get people to buy, to download apps, to download videos, or to buy new pairs of shoes, we believe that by giving information to empower public health organizations, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the California Highway Patrol, and
right,
police departments.
But Sean, I understand that you're coming at it from an altruistic standpoint. But if these predictions are fairly accurate, and they're using people's private conversations or written conversations on social media, what about the people that are going to misuse it?
Just like with anything, I mean, there will be people who will misuse anything. There are people who are using computers for good and bad things. There are people who are using computers for education and computers for hacking and cyber terrorism. I think that's just a broad question and something we need to be aware of with whether it's a technology or any new approach. There will be people who will use it for good and people who will use it for bad things. I mean, as a researcher, I focus on, I want to use it for good things, and I want to try as much as possible to show new ways that people can use it for good things, and contribute at least to the...
How can you tell if the way it's being used is good or bad? How can you judge that?
So that's a pretty big question, interesting question. Researchers would answer that question from ethics research, from the perspective of we can actually study that. It gets into a much broader question, but the short answer, I would say, is just like you can study biology, just like you can study psychology, just like you can study mathematics, and just as you can have policy implications from what you study, you can study ethically what the right decision is to make. You can interview people, you can have surveys, you can observe people's behavior. Those ethics, that line of what is the right thing to do is going to change with time, as things that we do today. If you just think about people's comfort in talking about sex, or people's comfort with sexual identities, things that were appropriate today might not have been appropriate before. And so that line of ethics changes, but the short answer is you can study it and decide what is ethical and what is appropriate, and create policy recommendations based on it.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you say, things change with time. The conversation we're having 5-10 years ago, it would have been science fiction, right? Mm-hmm. One, you wouldn't be able to do it. And two, it's like Big Brother's watching, right?
Yep. I mean, one of the common questions I'll get, I wrote a piece for the New York Times on using social data to monitor and predict crime. And that immediately pops up in people's mind. Minority Report. Is this Minority Report? And, it is a concern for people to be monitored. And we didn't have these technologies, we didn't have these approaches 10 years ago, and we're constantly changing. I'll start off with presentations that I give on this topic, showing a picture from the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill, and I'll say, who knows what is this a picture of? And 90% of people have seen Moneyball, so they know what it is. And then I ask, okay, what is Moneyball about? And depending upon who they are, people will give different responses, or depending upon which audience I'm talking to. So, if I'm talking to a group of
Looks like it's time for a quick break. Sean and I will return to our discussion on the other side of this break, so don't go away. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Don't miss the other fine shows and hosts on xzbn.net. You're listening to The Science of Magic, your resource for creative solutions in a changing world, thescienceofmagic.net. The Science of Magic is produced by Relmar McConnell Media Company, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Dreams are our personal gateways into infinite wisdom. Don't miss shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Corcoran's inspiring book, Shamanic Awakening Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles Sandra's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers and her initiations throughout the Americas and across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt. Sandy's knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth influence her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private tarot readings, international journeys, a meditative CD, as well as her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate this earth walk, creating a deeper connection to yourself and all that is. Find this and more at Sandy's website, starwalkervisions.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Dr. Sean Young, author of Stick With It, The Hidden Forces Behind Lasting Change. His website is seanyoungphd.com. Sean, how accurate are these predictions that you've been doing?
They vary based on what we're trying to look at. So we have, I think, HIV is an example where we've come to some high accuracy. We have about 97% accuracy. We can predict changes state by state or county by state, county by county changes in HIV trends from year to year. But then then we've been looking at other topics that we begin starting and maybe we're only 30% accuracy, which obviously we need to continue refining. So it really depends upon the topic, and there are a number of things that can let us know if we'll be in advance, if we'll be good or not good at predicting it.
Okay, so basically some things lend themselves well to this modality and others not so much.
Correct, yep.
So you speak of using social media and mobile technologies to change human behavior. How does that work?
Yeah, that's the topic of, you mentioned the book Stick With It. So this will be coming out in June, and really the topic of that book is how do we change human behavior, and not only how do we change human behavior, but how we change it and stick with it. And those are two separate questions, separate but related questions. So psychologists for many years have studied how we change behavior, and there are a number of different methods, some going back 100 years of how we change behavior. More recently, there's been some advances in social and cognitive psychology, but those are primarily based on how we change behavior once. So those experiments, the studies, were done typically on university students, where you bring them into a lab and you manipulate something in front of them and see if it changes them. What we've been doing more recently, and in a new type of psychologists are doing, who are like myself working in the medical school or working in business schools, we've been doing longitudinal studies where we work with people, not just undergraduate students, but we work with actual people who are affected by things like diseases or who want to change behaviors long term, and we track and see the science behind how you get them to not only change, but how to stick with that change. So that's
okay. So let me clarify, are we talking about an individual that's wanting to change their behavior, the studies are going towards that, or are we talking about changing societal behaviors?
We're talking about both. We're talking about both. Yeah, that's a great question. So we, in some of the studies that we will do, some of them will be people who want to change their behavior. For example, we're doing research. We've just finished up a study right now with pain patients at UCLA. So they have chronic pain. They've had it for much of their lives. They've been prescribed medications that are highly addictive and are at risk for addiction and overdose. And they want to get rid of their pain. They want to not be relying on these medications. And obviously they don't want to be addicted or to overdose. And so we're able to help them to change their behaviors. And we do that through using technologies, but you can do it with or without technologies.
What I find fascinating here is it seems like, you're coming from two different sides with the same modality. So you're predicting behavior, and then you're also using the technology to change behavior. How'd you come up with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I started with the idea of changing behavior, but to me, it's one and the same. I think I'm not someone who's in academic interested purely in just theory, where it's one thing. I'm very applied. I want to come up with solutions, and it's really difficult to be able to change something. You don't know why that thing is happening. If you want to get people, we work with a lot of HIV populations at risk for HIV to try to get them to test. If you don't know why people aren't testing for HIV, it's really hard to change it. But once you start learning why they are not testing, then you can start to predict who would be likely to actually test for it. And so to me, they're one and the same. We often start by looking at prediction and monitoring in order to get an idea of a person's psychology or group psychology. And once we have that understanding, we can make some predictions and learn both how do we change their behavior as well as who should we change the behavior of. Because if we predict that there's going to be a potential outbreak of HIV in rural Indiana, then that means we should start dedicating resources figuring out how we can change people's behavior.
Okay, so do you, where do you stand on permission? Do you implement these changes without permission?
No. So everything that we do is in the context of research, where we are. Well, there are two parts of it. There's the prediction part of it, which, like I mentioned, one part of the prediction is all public information. So we can look at what people are searching for on Google and use that as a proxy for whether there's going to be an outbreak of syphilis or HIV. That is public information. So we don't obtain permission because we don't even know the people who we're tracking. We're doing it at such a high level. Yeah, that's a good point. So you're just looking at numbers. You're not looking at individuals. Correct. We're looking at numbers and we're looking at locations. But then to do our actual studies to see can we change behavior, what we do is recruit a number of people into a study. And just like a drug trial, you could imagine you can't just give someone a drug. You have to get their permission that they're part of a study. We do the same thing. We recruit people into a study. We divide them up into one of two groups usually to see if typically we assign them to our HOPE intervention group, which stands for Harnessing Online Peer Education. It's an online community. So we'll have them join our HOPE online community, or what's called a control group where they're not being changed. And then we'll see, do they improve? And we find consistently that people who are in our HOPE communities change their behavior. They're about 2 to 3 times as likely actually to change their behavior. And then once we find out, and once we realize that they are able to change and our community was successful, then we can go to public health organizations, we can go to different organizations and tell them how we've been able to create change and work with them on a larger level to create a policy reform. So have there been any independent studies on, you've been doing lots of studies, have there been any independent studies on what you're doing? What do you mean by independent studies? Well, you're doing your own studies. Has someone studied your results or your outcome outside of you? Whenever we publish a paper, whenever we create a study, the academic process for that is then you submit it to a journal. That journal has typically 3 to 5 or 6 independent reviewers who are experts in the field who review it. And they look through the methods that were conducted, they look through the results, and they come back and they provide feedback or criticism and ultimately decide whether this is high-level science. And we've published 60 or 70 papers, so gone through that process many times where independent people have looked through it and validated it. And then outside of my own studies that I do, I'm often a consultant or involved as an advisor in helping other people design their studies on behavior change. And they've conducted their studies and found similar results. What do you see as the future of prediction technology? That's the far future. I don't know. It's a good question. I think I would say in the middle future, which would be something that might be an interesting prediction that I'll make, which is right now data are coveted. Companies and people are fighting over access to data. data are private. So so all of the questions that you're asking, you're asking a lot of privacy questions centered around the idea that people want to keep their data. They don't want other people to know what they're doing and what is happening. And I would predict that in not too far in the future, maybe 5-10 years from now, that's going, I wouldn't say not going to be a question anymore, but very little, it's going to be less important of a question, because data will be everywhere and people will not be as reluctant to share their data. And so what that means is that instead of data being so valuable, data will be more of a commodity, that data will just be available for use, and there will be kinds of machines and computer scientists and new technologies that are making use of the data in new ways that have never been done before. So
it's a brave new world, right?
It's a type of brave new world. Yeah,
you got to be brave to be in it. You're a frequent speaker on behavior change in the corporate world. Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So often companies want to know about organizational behavior change. Startups, a big question for startups is, how do I survive? And survive means if we're building in the world that I live in with startups, I'm typically referring to technology startups. So people who are developing mobile applications, people who are developing head-mounted display technologies like virtual reality goggles or smart watches and things like that. And how do I survive means, if I build this thing, how do I know people will actually use it and continue buying it? And that really, just like almost everything else in life, is a question that comes down to behavior change. Not just behavior change, but sticking with behavior change. And so these are things that I address in the book. In the book, I talk about there are 7 forces, as I call it, behind lasting change. And I present a model of how do you get people to change and stick with it. And it's a framework called science, where each letter of science represents one of these 7 forces. And these 7 forces together can teach people how they can continue to get themselves or others to change. So that's something that not just the corporate world, but individuals who are trying to stick with a New Year's resolution to exercise more, or just people who want to have a hobby like learning a new language or learning a new instrument and have not been able to stick with it. This book and that the principles behind lasting change would be helpful for them so that they can be able to change their behavior and stick with it.
Yeah, it sounds like a loaded gun. If you're using it on yourself, it's one thing, but if you're using it to manipulate the masses, it can be a little scary. I'd like to talk about that on the other side. We're going to have to take a break. Sean and I will be back shortly, so don't leave us now. This is The Science of Magic, your resource to altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric, working to create common ground for the betterment of our world. Join our email family to receive our amazing topic-driven episode collections at thescienceofmagic.net.
Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies.
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows.
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A Soul Balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world. There's a legend shared by many indigenous cultures of a time when the nations were cast to the 4 corners of the world. Each nation was given a body of sacred knowledge that held a different portion of the truth to preserve. True reality could not be known until all the nations reunited, combining the information. If a single one was missing, the world could not be reborn and darkness would prevail. The Science of Magic Radio is dedicated to reuniting the sacred knowledge. With the understanding, none of us has all the answers, but together we can open new perceptions and possibilities. Through our combined vision, the world can be reborn into a place where darkness no longer prevails. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, or visit us at thescienceofmagic.net. Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. What's up in your world? Email me at info@thescienceofmagic.net and suggest a topic that's on your mind. You're probably not the only one interested. Our guest this hour is founder and executive director of UCIPT, Dr. Sean Young. His website, SeanYoungPhD.com. Sean, we were talking about how this data that you're collecting is very profound, very powerful, and can be a bit of a loaded gun in the hands of someone that's just trying to manipulate people without any morals behind it. How do you, this has always been the case, right? You come out with raw data and it can be used either way. How do you see us as individuals being able to not participate if we choose not to?
Well, it's easy in one sense, it's really difficult in others. So the easy answer is shut yourself off from all devices. Stop using your phone, stop using Facebook or Twitter or anything else, and stop using smartwatches and other technologies. So that would be the easy answer, but which is really difficult to do because we're so dependent on those devices. I think that I'll give an example for myself. I mean, I'm very aware of monitoring from the things that I'm doing, the research that I'm doing. Like the people in our studies, I'm very comfortable with public health researchers and people using it for social good, and I would happily volunteer my data to be used for social good, just like people participate in science for social good. But I'm also aware that there are people hacking into devices all the time. On my computer, where the webcam is, I keep it covered when I'm not using it. There are people hacking into baby cams. There are always people out there who are now learning the ability to hack into things and use data in ways that we don't want them to, and that can be dangerous for individuals and society. It's just really a constant race to just like when the computer was created, it was created and personal computers made life much more efficient, but with it, they also create a lot more problems. Cars get people from place to place, but it can kill people. And I think just being aware of the risks of these technologies and risks of these approaches is important for the conversation, so we can create policy around how to prevent unwanted effects from it.
So how about habits? It seems to me like all of this is tracking habits as well as trying to break habits. So aren't we talking about habits here that make us predictable?
Sort of. Habits has a very particular connotation. You know, as a psychologist, I'll get picky about it, and I'll explain why in a minute. So in general, people talk about habits, and when they talk about habits, they mean things that we do commonly. And so if that's what you're referring to, then yes, these are just things that we do. But more specifically, habits are, to a psychologist and scientifically, habits are things that we do unconsciously, typically. They're things that we do over and over, usually the very frequently, and we're not even thinking about it. So an example of, we might say, I have a habit of getting really angry whenever I'm in traffic, or I have a habit of leaving my shoes around, or leaving my wallet when I walk away, and go out of the house. Other things, there are things that are very unconscious. So I have a habit of biting my nails, let's say someone might have, or I have a habit of when I'm in the middle of running, I'm still running. I'm not even aware that I'm running. The reason why that matters are different ways to change different behaviors.
What's the difference? What's the difference between a garden variety habit and OCD?
A garden variety habit. So garden variety habit is, we colloquially, we talk about habits as just anything that we're doing. So I have a bad habit of eating too much. Well, if I'm eating too much and I'm not aware of it, then that's a definition of habit for psychologists. But OCD is something that people typically are aware of. They're aware that they're doing. A classic example is checking locks. I check a lock over and over again. Typically, the person is aware that they are checking a lock, but they continue to do it. And so the difference is, if the way I define habits and psychologists typically define habits are things that are unconscious. So OCD may be a habit if it's something that's done repetitively and without awareness, but it may not be a habit. It may just be something that people are doing that they don't want to keep doing, but they're aware of while they're doing it. Then it's an important because again, in the book, I talk about these differences, and the differences matter because the way we change those behaviors differ based upon whether it's something we're aware of or not. That's really the
Big
distinguishing
difference.
factor.
Yeah. So do other people, or for that matter, the systems, control us through our habits?
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you know what a person unconsciously, habitually does, can't you control them through their behavior, their unconscious behavior?
If you know
Like-
what a person...
Okay, so say for instance, if I know that this person will get angry every time I say a certain thing, and I want them to be angry and come across poorly in public, all I have to do is say that thing. I mean, I watch people control each other through their unconscious habits all the time. Have you seen that, and how can we prevent that?
Yeah, I don't think that's something... that is human nature, human psychology, and that's the basis of our interventions and our research. So we started off talking about prediction and understanding people, and what you're really saying is, I think what you're saying is, if we're able to predict people, then are we able to change them? And absolutely, and that's the purpose of learning how to predict people. From my perspective, we want to learn how to predict people and things so that we can change it and improve it. It goes back to you may want to prevent that if you believe that people are only using that information for negative things. If you believe that they're trying to use it to harm you, then you will want to prevent it. But if people are using it for positive things, to promote better health, to create global health, to bring people clean drinking water, then you wouldn't want to prevent it. And but how do you prevent it? It goes back to the question of how do you prevent people from having their data? You can shut off devices. You can detach yourself digitally. You can't really, as soon as you're interacting with other people, as soon as you're conversation, things that I'm saying right now, my tone, my words, this is creating, people can use this information to predict what I'm going to do or say in the future. The only way for me to stop would be to just cut it off.
Yeah, well, there's another way, though, isn't there? It seems to me we've gone full circle, and the bottom line here is knowing yourself, bringing your unconscious behaviors conscious, choosing rather than just reacting. Is that accurate at all?
People do what... I don't think on the level of consciousness. I observe people's behavior and see what I observe. So it doesn't matter to me whether you are conscious or not. If I see a large group of people, whether they're conscious or not, I can be able to look at that information and learn how to predict what they're doing next. So consciousness doesn't really, whether people are conscious or not, that doesn't prevent people from being able to predict what they're going to do in the future.
But if you're conscious of it, aren't you able to choose what you do in the future more readily than if you're unconsciously reacting?
Okay. So on an individual level, you're saying, okay,
yes,
absolutely, and that's really the reason for why I wrote this book, because people would come to me frequently saying, how do I went to the doctor, I was told to take this medication, I want to take the medication, but I keep forgetting, or I'm not taking it. Or every January 1st, I make a New Year's resolution that I'm going to go to the gym 3, 4, 5 days a week. I do it for a week or two, and then I quit. So how do I get myself to keep doing it? And that was the rationale for writing this book, where there's actually a science behind how you do that. Consciousness is a big part of it. Consciousness, surprisingly to a lot of people, consciousness is not required. You don't need to be conscious in order to...
I'm going to have to call it quits. It's been fun talking. Time flies, and I'm afraid we're out of it. Thanks for being on the show. Our guest this hour has been author of Stick With It, The Hidden Forces Behind Lasting Change, Dr. Sean D. Young. His website is SeanYoungPhD.com. This has been The Science of Magic. For in-depth exploration of leading-edge subjects from numerous authorities and viewpoints, join our email family to receive our topic-driven episode collections at thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love as you embrace lasting change.
One people, one nation, searching for